All right, so we're diving into something pretty fascinating today. Um, Indian Railways, they're shaking things up. You know those iconic bustling train stations? Well, hold on to your hats because they're about to get a whole lot less crowded, at least for some people.
Yeah, this new policy, it's a big one. Basically, they're restricting platform access at 60 of their busiest stations. Only folks with confirmed tickets can actually get onto the platforms now.
60 stations. That's what, like a huge chunk of their major hubs?
Oh, yeah, we're talking New Delhi, Howrah, Varanasi, all the big names. Places where just getting to your train can sometimes feel like running a marathon.
Yeah, it's part of the experience, right? The energy, the crowds, the farewell parties spilling onto the tracks. It's almost like a cultural phenomenon at this point.
Right, but it's also, well, a bit of a logistical nightmare, and let's be honest, a safety hazard too.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've seen videos, read articles. It can get pretty intense.
Hmm?
Not exactly the most ideal environment for, say, elderly passengers or families with small children.
Exactly. There have even been some incidents, stampedes, and things like that that have resulted in injuries. So, crowd control, it's a major factor here.
So it's not just about like aesthetics or making things more orderly. It's really about safety.
Yeah, safety's a big part of it. But there's another angle, too. This whole farewell frenzy, as charming as it is, it creates a lot of opportunities for ticketless travelers to sneak onto trains.
Ah, so they're trying to crack down on that too.
Absolutely. By limiting platform access, they're hoping to make it much harder for people to just hop on without a valid ticket. It makes things fairer for those who actually bought tickets.
Right, makes sense. Plus, I imagine it makes the whole experience a bit more pleasant for those who are actually supposed to be on the platform.
Exactly. Less pushing and shoving, you might actually be able to hear the announcements for once.
Okay, yeah, I can definitely see the appeal. But what about those who don't have a confirmed ticket? You know, the folks on the waiting list, where do they go?
Well, that's where things get a little interesting. Instead of waiting on the platform with everyone else, they'll be directed to designated waiting areas outside the station.
Outside the station. So, like, not even in the building.
Yeah, that's right. And that's raised a lot of questions, about the quality of those areas, how well they'll be managed, especially if you've got a long wait ahead of you.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how that all plays out. Will it actually be an improvement? Will these areas be comfortable, safe? We'll have to wait and see.
Definitely a wait and see situation. But for now, I think we've got a pretty good grasp on the what and the why behind this whole policy shift.
Yeah, we've got the background. Now, the big question is how are they going to actually enforce this at 60 of India's busiest train stations? I mean, that's a massive undertaking.
Oh, yeah, it's a big one. And that's where we'll pick things up in the next part of this deep dive. Welcome back, everyone. Now, we just started talking about this huge new policy by Indian Railways, no more platform access unless you've got that confirmed ticket. 60 major stations, can you believe that? We talked about trying to control those massive crowds, make things a bit fairer for those who bought tickets. But, it makes you wonder, what about all those other folks who depend on these stations?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. Like the vendors, the porters, even just the chai wallas, their whole livelihood revolves around these bustling platforms.
Exactly. It's their bread and butter. And then there's the whole cultural aspect too, the farewell parties, the families saying goodbye right on the tracks. It's so iconic. What happens to all of that?
It's almost like a part of like the Indian train travel identity, you know. Can you even picture a station like, say, Howrah or New Delhi with all that energy and those crowds?
It's hard to imagine, right? I mean, maybe the vendors, they'll adapt. Maybe they'll start setting up shop outside the station where they're putting those designated waiting areas for waiting list passengers.
Makes sense. I guess we'd see like a whole new kind of hub popping up right outside the gates.
Yeah, a chai stall boom. Who knows?
And what about the goodbyes, those farewell parties? Maybe they'll just get smaller, you know, more intimate.
Yeah, maybe they'll shift outside too. It'll be a
Mhm.
different vibe for sure.
Could be the start of some new traditions. I mean, this whole thing, it's like a social experiment unfolding.
Oh, it totally is. And we can't forget about the railway staff either. Think about it. They're the ones who'll have to enforce this policy every day. It's a big responsibility.
For sure. It won't be easy. I mean, people are used to doing things a certain way. There's bound to be some pushback, right?
Oh, yeah, especially at first. Imagine trying to tell a crowd of hundreds, maybe even thousands, that they can't get onto the platform anymore. That's got to take some serious diplomacy.
Oh, yeah, I can see that getting tense. And it's not just about one or two stations, remember. It's 60. Can they really enforce this consistently across the board?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Consistency is going to be key here. If the rules are different at different stations, it's just going to create more confusion and frustration.
And, well, we have to talk about the elephant in the room, corruption. It's a reality in many parts of India.
Mm.
Could this policy make it worse, with all the potential for, well, let's just say creative interpretations of the rules?
It's a legitimate concern. If they're not careful, this whole thing could create opportunities for bribery and favoritism. They're going to have to be really transparent about how they're enforcing this, make sure there's accountability.
Yeah, transparency is key. Maybe some kind of system for reporting any shady stuff or a hotline for complaints.
Right, something like that. Because honestly, this is a huge undertaking. There are going to be challenges, no doubt about it.
But hey, if they manage to pull it off, think about the possibilities. Cleaner, safer platforms, a more efficient system.
Maybe even a step towards greater accountability and order. Who knows?
Yeah, it's ambitious, that's for sure. But like any big change, it's not without its risks.
Yeah, there are always those unintended consequences lurking around the corner. And that's what we're going to explore in the final part of this deep dive.
Okay, so we've talked about the good stuff, right? Less chaos, a fairer system, maybe even a more pleasant experience for those with those confirmed tickets.
Yeah.
But let's be real, no policy is perfect. There are always downsides. What could potentially go wrong with all of this?
Well, that's where things get really, really interesting. It's like every action has a reaction, right? And sometimes those reactions, they're not what we expect. And one of the things that people are worried about is accessibility.
Accessibility. Okay, so break that down for me.
Think about it, right? Like Indian train stations, they're already a bit of a challenge, for people with disabilities, older folks, families with young kids. It's a lot to navigate. Now imagine adding another layer on top of all of that with these new restricted areas and everything.
Ah, I see what you're saying. It's tough enough for those folks to get around a busy station as it is. This could create a real barrier for them.
Exactly. The railways, they're going to have to think long and hard about how they implement this to make sure it doesn't end up, disproportionately impacting those who are already facing challenges.
Okay, so what can they do? Like, what would make this work better for everyone?
Well, for starters, clear signage. And I don't just mean those little signs with tiny print. Big, bold, easy to read directions, especially for those who might have visual impairments.
Makes sense. And maybe, like, specific assistance points for those who need extra help, or even, priority queues for certain groups.
Exactly. Those are all great ideas. And it's not just about the physical stuff either. What about the digital divide? This policy, it really leans into technology, online bookings, e-tickets, all that. But not everyone in India has access to those resources. What about them?
Yeah, good point. Not everyone's got a smartphone or reliable internet. This could leave a lot of folks behind if they're not careful.
Right. So they need to have alternatives. Offline ticketing, clear information booths, maybe even staff specifically there to help those who aren't so tech savvy.
So it sounds like even though this policy comes from a good place, like wanting to improve things, there's still a lot of room for things to go wrong.
Yeah, it's like you try to make a change, but then it sets off this whole chain reaction. You pull one lever, a bunch of other things start moving that you didn't even think about.
So it's not just about putting the policy in place. It's about constantly keeping an eye on things, being ready to make adjustments as you go.
Exactly, being responsive. And that's where feedback is so important. The railways, they need to listen to people, to those actually using the system. Be open to criticism. Be willing to admit when something's not working.
So this isn't like a finished story. It's just the beginning.
Oh, absolutely. It's like a grand experiment, and we're all part of it now. And whether this whole thing works or not, it doesn't just depend on the railways. It depends on everyone. The passengers, the staff, the vendors, all of us.
Yeah, we all got to be in this together. Be patient. Be willing to adapt,
Exactly. And who knows, maybe down the line we'll look back on this and be like, wow, that was a major turning point. That's when Indian train travel really took a leap forward.
Or maybe it'll be a cautionary tale. Like even with the best intentions, things don't always go to plan.
Only time will tell, right? That's what makes this so interesting.
It really is. So we've really gone deep on this one, haven't we? Explored the what, the why, the how, looked at both the positives and those potential downsides. We've talked about those huge crowds, ticketless travel, the impact on folks like the vendors and the railway staff, and those concerns about accessibility and technology. It's been a real journey.
And now we want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on this big change? Do you think it'll work? Will it actually make train travel in India better? Or will it just create more problems? We want to know.
That's it for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next one.